we're not a monocultural church, and God's given us all these amazing people from other cultures, and we can also connect with our local community by embracing a bit more of our own identity.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the All Nations podcast, and we're here to equip, mobilize, and inspire you for global mission. Today's a cold morning here at All Nations, but we're getting warmed up today with Dr. Jill Ford.
Hey.
She's a specialist in arts and mission. It's really good to have you with us, Jill.
Thank you, Felipe.
I know that you're also a part of the senior leadership team at All Nations Christian College.
Yeah.
Plus other stuff she does all around the world. She's a legend. We have the arts legend here with us. And it's a privilege to have you with us, Jill.
Thank you.
I hope that we can have a great conversation, that we can hear from you as well, and your speciality and the stuff that you're really good at, and the way God has been using you around the world, and also here at All Nations as an arts tutor and all that.
Yeah.
So welcome.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you.
So how are you feeling today, Jill?
Okay, tiny bit below par. It's that sort of halfway time between the term, a little bit of a cold, but pushing on through as we do.
That's the way it's going to be.
Yeah.
But to hear you saying that you're in the low, it's surprising for me, because you're always on the high.
Always on the high. I know. I do have my little moments, but I usually pick up again. So yeah, but no. Other than that, all is good. Yeah,
that's great.
Thank you.
So I heard you're getting ready for Carols at Easney.
Yes, Carols at Easney, our annual wonderful carol service, which is great because we live stream it now. So the lovely thing is that there's obviously a lot of activity on site in preparing that, but it's great now that this goes out across the world and people can zoom in from all over the place and
that's amazing.
Be part of it. So yeah, there's an added dimension these days.
So what we'll do, we'll also put a link at the end for you to join. If wherever you are in the world that you watch us, you'll be able to join Carols at Easney with Jill Ford. You can't miss it. Plus the students at All Nations as well.
Absolutely.
All right, Jill. So it's, like I said, it's amazing to be with you. And I really want to discuss a bit about your role as well, but also your background. You know, how did you end up going into arts and mission? How these two things work together?
Yeah.
How do you actually do that in practice? Maybe a little bit of the stuff that you teach as well. So I think that just for us to start from the beginning, how did you get into this? When was it? Were you a believer already when you thought about doing art, or when this whole arts thing and then the mission thing came together?
Okay, yeah. Okay, so we have to rewind a little bit. But so basically as a young person growing up, I had a real interest in music, music and dance actually. And so I was going to ballet lessons till I was about 13. But then I realised it's quite a lot to do ballet and a lot of music as well. So one thing had to take over. And so the music kind of took over a bit more. So I was having piano lessons, cello lessons, voice lessons, as well as going to school and doing all this stuff.
How did you have time for school then?
I know. It was, my life's always been full like that. I've always been, juggling things, but so I was like a very keen musician, and so that was the kind of track that I was kind of following quite a bit in my sort of primary, secondary years. And then I was realising actually that having been involved in some school productions, things like that, mainly from a musical point of view, I thought, I've got a real interest in all the arts actually, not just music. So when I came to study for my degree, I really wanted to study music with other art forms, just because I just thought, love music, but as an isolated discipline, I just thought it connects so much with the other art forms anyway. So
where did you do it?
Yeah, so I did my degree down in Chichester, which was then called the West Sussex Institute of Higher Education. So I did a music and related arts degree, which was great. And so it was quite advanced for its time, because at the time that I was looking for degree courses, there was only two options. There was an inter-arts course, music and inter-arts at Bretton Hall in Wakefield, and this one down in Chichester at West Sussex Institute, which was related arts. And that really was a great course. It opened up not only the sort of history of the arts as well, but also the dynamic of collaborative work that you can do with as a musician with other kind of students who were there actually at the college. So I was working with dancers, I was working with storytellers, I was working with other people, and then we were putting on loads of shows. So I kind of got into the whole music theatre scene. Absolutely loved that, and that was a combination of being a performer as well as being in the pit playing piano or cello, and just seeing how the whole production works. So that really inspired me.
So you really know how to put on a show then?
Well, it's part of my it is part of my past. Yeah, I sadly haven't done as much recently, but I suppose I've used a lot of those skills at college. You know, when we've been doing events and things like that. But I absolutely loved the musicals, and just it was a space where all the arts come together, and I think that's why I absolutely loved it. It wasn't just one area; it was all the arts working together to create something amazing and dynamic. So, so I went into schools and did that as well. So when I finished my college course, I did a little bit of freelance work for a few years, which involved working with youth theatres, working with local amateur dramatics, and then I went into my teacher training and then focused in on working in secondary schools, and that's where I still did the shows, and that made me popular teacher because the kids just loved it. So we did things like Guys and Dolls. We did a production called The Hired Man, and I loved working with the young people. It was just amazing seeing how the arts could impact their lives at that point in their lives as well, because they were like, a lot of them were teenagers, and it was just seeing how their creative skills and gifts could really grow through being part of these productions, and just the confidence that they gained, the sense of self-awareness and self-value as well. They valued themselves a lot more. So it was just a great space to see the transformative power of the arts, actually.
And now, when then did you see, because I mean, you're talking about the transformative power of the arts, when did you see then, let's say, that shifted into the gospel, into missions?
Yeah. Interesting, because actually I wasn't making the connections for quite a while. So I was teaching, I was part of a local church, very much involved with the worship, and seeing that creativity had a space of sorts within those things, but not really. I didn't have a sort of well-honed understanding, and I certainly didn't have an understanding of mission at that point. But when I realised that I wanted to sort of move out of teaching and sort of begin to explore what full-time ministry for God would look like, I found myself at All Nations and doing some study, thinking, well, if I'm going to do some full-time ministry or mission, I need to understand a lot more about it. I need to get some training. So through a whole series of events, and that's a whole other story, the Lord led me here to All Nations.
But how did study? But that's the how did
you want to?
I want to hear the whole thing.
Yeah. Okay. So you want to tap into that bit as well?
How
okay.
did He lead you?
A little bit of rewind.
How was it when let's say when you felt the call?
Yeah.
How was it? Was it a voice? Was someone told you? Or did you feel the Lord speak to you through someone? Or did He speak to you through His word? Do you remember?
Yeah, it was really interesting. There was kind of series of events. These things sort of come in threes often, don't they?
Yeah.
But, first thing was I was getting a bit restless. And that's usually a little bit of an indication that some change is on the horizon. And I started actually really praying, Lord, what is it you want from me next? Do I just move from one school to another? Or, I'm kind of feeling like there's more for me. And I was so involved with my church that I really wanted to sort of look at that a lot more. So that was going on, and I was praying. And then one day I remembered going to, we had a church away day. And it was actually at another college in Midhurst called Christ for the Nations.
Okay.
Yeah. And we just had this away day there. And the Lord knew that I was seeking Him. And I just remembered looking up and seeing all these international flags in the room and having a sense that God was trying to say something to me, but I just didn't know what it was. But I just really remembered seeing all these flags. It was a really strong kind of moment in the weekend. And then I ended up sharing a house with a girl who'd been on mission to Haiti. Her dad was connected with Tear Fund. We ended up sharing a house together. And so she started telling me all about her mission experience while we were sharing this house, which was just for 1 year. And that was getting really interesting. And at the same time, I started supporting a missionary in our church who'd gone to do a YWAM DTS in Israel.
Oh, wow.
And so I was getting this insight into mission that was much broader than my initial understanding. My understanding was that missionaries were mainly involved in Bible translation. So that's how limited it was. And that we used to see this wonderful couple come back from Turkey every year, tell us which part of the Bible they translated, and then
that was it.
That was it, basically. And can we help fund them? So I never really thought there was much more. But then, when I kind of started getting connected with others, and particularly people who were the same age as me, around my 30s, and I was thinking, oh, this is really exciting. Like, there's a lot more. There's a lot more to know. There's a lot more to understand. So I started supporting this guy in Israel who I was a kind of link person for. So it wasn't just I was giving financial support and prayer. I was actually his link person within the church, which made me realise...
Get more involved, understand more,
More involved, understand more. So it was a bit of a combination of this kind of like exposure to mission that I was getting in my everyday. And then I started thinking, okay, making a decision now that I'm going to sort of perhaps just have this 1 year then for the Lord and explore that. And that's when I thought, actually, I can't go and do anything based on what I was seeing was available without any form of training. And so there was a bit of a journey in sort of looking at Bible colleges. And a friend told me about All Nations. And it's so funny because I'm such a sucker for a good prospectus, because I saw the All Nations prospectus at the time, which was really cool. And it had this cutout of the world in lots of different colours. And I was comparing that prospectus with all these other prospectuses of the Bible colleges. And I thought, this looks great. But in the All Nations prospectus was also a course that they were running, because this was back in about 1999, 2000, I was looking at this. So I looked in the All Nations prospectus and they already had a course in performing arts and mission. I thought, wow, that looks really interesting. What is that? I'd never seen anything like this before. I just thought it was going to be a load of biblical modules.
Intercultural stuff.
And so anyway, I thought, this is really interesting. This is a Bible college that is kind of open to creativity. And so that sparked my interest. And then I thought, it's obviously drawing creatives here. And so I thought, then that seems like it's a space for me. That seems like a home place for me to go and study. So it was interesting. So I did come here. I explored it all. I was really excited by the programme. I was excited by the international environment. But before I actually put my sort of feet right in, I ended up going to visit this missionary in Israel.
Oh, wow.
And as part of just the support kind of side of things. And it was so interesting because we had our own tour guide in him, and he had a gift of prophecy as well. And so he was prophesying over each of us who were there, and just giving a prophecy that God did want to use me. He did want to use me creatively, but he wanted to use my voice as well. And I thought, oh, that's really interesting. And then I went to the Garden Tomb, which is one of the possible sites where Jesus was crucified. Had an amazing time there, and was just sort of having my time in a quiet area of the garden. And this lady called me over, and she was with a group of women, and she was washing their feet. And she just said, the Lord has told me to wash your feet and commission you for mission.
Oh, wow.
I know.
So it was very direct then.
Yeah. So it's like, I want you to come and join the women, if that's all right with you. You remind me of Mary in the garden. She kept saying Mary in the garden to me. But she washed my feet and she spoke the words of Matthew 28 over my life.
Wow.
And for me, that sealed the deal. That, God was
now
God.
I've been literally commissioned to go into it.
In that amazing place. And so it felt like that was my kind of green light for go as well. It really was. All Nations was where I was headed. And and the rest is history. And I'm still here.
That's what I was going to say.
I can't get away.
Never left again.
Never left the building with that sense. But so it was really, really incredible. So then, so God brought me here. I didn't actually do the performing arts certificate, but I was really good friends with a couple that were running that. And so in my time here as a student, I had a ball basically because there were a lot of students who were highly skilled musicians as well. Yep. So I was able to connect with them. And we did all sorts of things, from a load of worship gigs. We did a lot of informal entertainment for the college. We were doing an evangelistic band. And I was just thinking, this is great, but there's no actual training for musicians in mission. Mm-hmm. So we had the performing arts course that was going on here, which was great.
And do you remember what was sort of the modules that were in that course?
In that course, that was kind of more focused on physical theatre and dance, because the two tutors who were running that at the time, that was their expertise and specialism. So that was great. So it was drawing a sort of specialist group of performers and dancers to come and do that. And then, so we had that going on, but then we had this whole area of sort of the informal curriculum, we could say, where we were kind of, it was flourishing with all the fact that we had loads of musicians here. So for me, it was just like a creative playground, really. It was just fantastic.
So was it there that you thought about this whole multicultural worship thing, really? Or
not quite, but it was there that I started getting a vision for how the arts can be part of mission, because I'd never really thought about that. And I remember doing a module here called the Biblical Framework for the Arts. And that was the first time that I'd really explored how the arts are in the Bible, how they matter to God, how they're integral actually to mission and to both the communication of the gospel, but also the expression of the gospel. And that was key, because I thought, I've just not thought about this before. And it was actually what God was doing while I was studying was he was envisioning me. He was envisioning me to see the place of the arts in mission. And he was also preparing me because I was going through the All Nations curriculum, but I was starting to join a lot of dots. And I suddenly thought, there are loads of things that we could be doing that complement the sort of biblical and intercultural aspects of this curriculum that really encourage creatives to be involved in mission.
But one thing that you said that was very, very interesting to you, that the way that God commissioned you and also, let's say, gave you that vision, he was showing you further ahead.
Yeah.
But as well as preparing you for that.
Yeah, I know.
So it's not just like, I commission you, now you're going to wait for a bit. No, he's basically having that whole picture.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah. So it was funny because I was praying for a few things. I was praying that I could use my teaching skills. I was praying that I could work with internationals. And I was praying for a home base. And it was like, so when I finished the training at All Nations, I got all of those three.
3 in 1.
All in one.
Oh, wow.
In this place. Yeah.
Yes,
so it was like, yeah. But like I say, at the time, I had no idea that there was this preparation going on. But you always have to look back sometimes, don't you, to go, oh, that's what was going on. But yeah, so then I was basically what actually happened towards the end of my studies here. I'd already spoken to the leadership and said, look, we've got all these musicians here. Why is there nothing in music? We ought to be thinking about that. And then at the same time, the couple that were running the performing arts course were sort of planning on moving on. They were going into some other areas of the arts. And so there was going to be a space for further development of the arts and to incorporate the music, to incorporate some other subject areas, and to basically sort of rework the arts curriculum. And really my heart was, because the course that had been running was excellent, but it was a little bit sort of to the side. So it was kind of drawing people in, but they were mainly coming to do that course. Whereas I just thought, but I've been sort of working with and spending time with people who are on the mainstream courses, but have got these incredible gifts of music and other skills. And so I just thought it would be really good if actually the arts modules were sort of integrated into the training so that whoever comes, whether Joe Bloggs comes and they can actually study a creative module and they can explore their creative gifting. They might have an inkling that they've got something that they could use in mission. So what we did was we redefined the curriculum, and originally we sort of started with a certificate in the arts and intercultural study, a diploma, but then it became clearer that we had all these modules that were starting to develop, but let's integrate them for the rest of the the college cohort. And so that's what's been a kind of key part of the work here actually, is that the arts modules have been embedded in, and they're very much part of the practice-focused part of our curriculum, the vocational part. And they're not just this add-on. They're central almost in there, but people don't always realise that. But they're in there, they're in the mix, and we're able to explore the intercultural, we're able to explore biblical, we're able to explore practical, we're able to explore our spiritual and formation, the spiritual and formational aspects of who we are as we engage in some of the modules. I mean, some modules are more honed to certain areas, but so, and then going back to your question about how did I get into the multicultural side of things, that came through, I realised there was only so much that I could offer into this curriculum. I had to call on people who had much more skill in mission than me as well, and had been using their skills. So I ended up teaming up with Ian Collins, who's an ethnomusicologist. And Ian came to teach here. And it was actually through Ian's teaching. It was incredible. I was learning along the way. But Ian was fronting some of the modules that were more sort of then ethnomusicology focused. Now we call those modules sort of multicultural worship or intercultural worship. And so, so I was learning quite a lot through Ian, who was coming to teach here anyway. And then this is a whole area that we've been developing over the years and really trying to see traction in preparing not only our students, but people from the local churches as well, who've got access to the multicultural worship modules, to be prepared to extend their worship repertoire for the people that actually are in their church. So,
amazing. And that's amazing.
So
there's a lot of things that you said, like the way the Lord led you, and then the way now the meeting Ian and understanding this whole, how do you call it,
musicology area.
I'm glad you changed to multicultural worship. That's a bit easier.
It's a bit more accessible, isn't it?
Definitely. But the way the Lord leads you there, puts the right people in your path to prepare you even more for what He was going to do with you.
Exactly.
Now, how many people have you trained then, throughout all these years? How many people would you think you've trained?
That's totally put me on the spot.
And I mean, just a rough idea. And also, what sort of areas have people been using those arts that around the world, here in the UK? Yeah.
I mean, well, training-wise, in terms of the multicultural worship, we've been running those courses since about 2003.
Okay.
So nearly 20 years. Well, actually 20 years, definitely.
That's a lot of people.
It's a lot. So, and usually we would have a combination of All Nations students and local people or national people, or anyone who wants to come and do the training. So, let's say an average of the Multicultural Worship Day attracts usually around 20 people. So, and then the Multicultural Worship Week could be anywhere between 10 and 15. So, I mean, we probably trained hundreds. I think what's more interesting is not the number, but the people that have come to access the training have been leaders in their own right. And then they've gone and made an impact in their sphere or their country or their church. So I think probably what we'll see as the years go on is, All Nations students who have trained here in that area and then gone and implemented projects, a kind of multicultural worship ethos in their church. So we'll see the overflow.
And can you show us a little bit about some students? What are they doing at the moment that you know of?
So one of our students, she came and did the master's course, and she did a master's in arts and mission with us. Okay. But her focus was her actual project, her master's project was in multicultural worship. She had come back from Pakistan with her husband to a church in Leicester, and realised that the church was extremely multicultural, but the community around the church was multicultural as well. And yet there was nothing in their sort of worship expression that indicated it was a multicultural church, or that they might want to reach their neighbourhood through forms of multicultural worship, because worship works as witness. And so she was kind of like a bit crestfallen in this. And so this was a kind of momentum for her to sort of go, what can I do through my research project to help the church understand the importance of multicultural worship, but also model it in some way that it feels very accessible and doable. Because sometimes people hear it and they go, oh my goodness, where do you start with that? That sounds terrifying. So what was interesting with her, this poor student, she was hit by the pandemic. So she was doing research.
That was recently then?
Yeah. It's quite a recent project. So, but amazingly, she found a way. And so what she decided to do was focus in on the children's workers and the youth workers, and look at the number of different nationalities within the youth group and within the sort of the children's section, and think, I'm going to start from the bottom up. Instead of trying to train leaders and work top down, she goes, no. I'm going to go for the kids, and I'm going to go for the workers and all those important people there, and I'm going to train them, and I'm going to teach them how important this is. And she's going to teach the children multicultural songs as well, a number of different cultures. And so what she was able to do, we were just moving out of the pandemic at the time, she was able to do a service which was led by the young people and the children, with their focus on them, at Pentecost. So it's Pentecost Sunday. And she implemented this service, which was multicultural worship. And what she also did was draw out a whole range of the languages present within the church. So it wasn't just about singing multicultural songs. It was about interviews with church members who, perhaps hadn't been up on the platform before, but how have they ended up coming to this church in Leicester? And what was their call? And they realised at the end of this service, they traced that the church had 50 different nationalities in it. Wow. And it was a big shock to them that it was almost like, the scales come off the eyes and they see. So she was able to produce this service which celebrated Pentecost, celebrated diversity, and just gave the church a glimpse of, hang on a minute, this is who we are. We're not a monocultural church, and God's given us all these amazing people from other cultures. And we can also connect with our local community by embracing a bit more of our own identity in how we express our worship to God. So, her amazing project.
That's amazing project. Yeah, I think they know in the UK today, especially, there's a lot of those churches making that shift. And a lot of them have been actually struggling a bit to make that shift and understand, okay, how do we shift? Because the churches have grown so much with different cultures. And how do you embrace that as a church? How do you, even within leadership itself?
That's right.
Sometimes you see churches who they say, okay, we're a multicultural church. When you look at the leadership, they're not. How does that play into that? So that is very interesting to hear that, and the way that she did it. Starting from the top. Or from the bottom to the top.
Bottom to the top,
It's very, very interesting way to do it, actually. Which is pretty cool.
It's really interesting. Had another student, actually, she worked with, again, up in the north, but she'd had quite a lot of connections with international students and international student ministry, and recognised that the students that she was working with had a lot of what she called cultural capital. So they had a lot of knowledge about culture. They had a lot of knowledge about their age group as well. And they were all potential leaders. And so her project was to produce a series of workshops that was kind of training them in sort of further cultural consciousness, but also in leadership, to then go and implement a small thing in their church that would help their leadership to kind of begin to think, oh, hang on a minute, we need to be embracing this. So she kind of did a filtered approach, I would call that, where she was training international student leaders to do one thing in their church that would then spark the conversations and open it up for the leadership to go, hang on a minute, we really need to be thinking about this seriously. So it was it's quite interesting just as I'm talking about those two different types of model, but that was born out of the students that came to All Nations did the masters, their experience, but it was born out of the context that they were serving in. And so they were kind of going, how do I respond appropriately to the need in my church or in this group of churches, which was the case with, mobilising the international student leaders.
So those two were in the UK?
Those two were UK based. They were UK, they were both UK students and they were both UK based, yeah. Do
you have any stories from someone who didn't do the project in the UK but went somewhere else to do it? And ran it like, I don't know, like a...
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't so much a multicultural worship project, but there was a student that worked, she did, at the degree level, we do something called the Extended Arts Project, which is a practice-based research project.
I did that one.
You did that one, yeah. So maybe you should talk about yours, your Moroccan experience. But so this student actually was doing workshops, and because she wanted to engage, women in sort of more of a Muslim context.
Okay.
So she went and actually did her workshops. She did a combination of some in Hong Kong and some in Jordan.
Okay.
And so she took basically what she'd learned in our performing arts modules here and used the workshop model as a means to engage women who wouldn't perhaps normally be able to open up about their understanding of faith, their understanding of God. And she used like calligraphy for some of the Arabic speaking women. She used sort of basic drama techniques for the women in Hong Kong. And then she kind of compared all of these together to see how she'd been able to engage the women in a theme of what it is to be a woman of God. That was the kind of overarching theme. So she planned these workshops around that. And she used, like I say, she had one sort of set in Hong Kong, one set in Jordan. And then she sort of brought this together to see how the engagement with the arts enabled them to engage also biblical text in an unthreatening way and to open up conversations about God that perhaps she wouldn't have been able to do.
That's really good. So, it's a really good way of doing that, actually.
Yeah, so she did a great job. She did such a great job that there's a chapter in the book called Arts Across Cultures, which was produced and edited by a former tutor as well, Warren Beatty, Dr. Warren Beatty. And so there's a chapter of this students' workshops in there, how she learnt the model from All Nations, how she went away and did it, and then how she evaluated it, and what God's done with that. So so anyone who wants to know more on that,
no.
Arts Across Cultures.
There you go. Yeah,
little plug.
So Jill, so you've gone, from where the Lord called you all the way up to you coming to All Nations and the way the Lord brought you here, and you're still here.
I'm still here, amazingly, yes.
Which is amazing. And how do you see now moving forward in the sense of not just All Nations, but even, let's say, talking about arts and mission? How do you see the arts and mission today within the UK, within, globally as well, speaking? How do you see that? How do you see that movement moving forward? With this whole mission
strand, really. Well, there's another complicated word that I need to introduce you to.
Okay, there we go.
Because there's a field of study that really has been developing all the time that I've been at All Nations. And before I even knew about it myself, I think I've been tapping into it. And that is this field of study called Ethnodoxology.
Ethnodoxology.
Yeah, that's right. So ethno is peoples, doxology is praise. And it's looking at how the people of the world can praise God in culturally appropriate ways using their own artistic expression.
Okay.
And so this area or this field of study covers ultimately worship. It covers that, but it does cover sort of the fullness of artistic expression.
When you say worship, do you mean music worship? Is that what you
mean? But more than just music, because the idea is that people can worship God using their arts,
dance.
All of their arts. Absolutely, all their arts. So not just language as well, but language is in there. All the arts are in there. So it's all the arts for all the world, for all of God's purposes, really. And so it's a field of study that looks at that and mobilizes people with a heart to see the nations worshipping God, actually. And that's really all missionaries, I think, that they want people to know God, know who he is, and to be able to worship him and have a relationship with him. So ethnodoxology is really looking at how can we help people do that appropriately in a form that is meaningful to them, that is reflective of their true identity. You know, we know that God isn't English and God isn't French. He's all cultures. He's a diverse and beautiful God, and he wants to be worshipped in diverse ways, not just in a monocultural form or just through music. He wants to be worshipped. He's the God of the nations. He wants the nations to express themselves fully to him. So this field of study is really helping a lot of people. It's helping not just artists and creatives, but it's helping the church. It's helping church leaders. It's helping missionaries to really understand. We spend a lot of time investing in language, heart language. What's the language of the people? How do I learn the heart language of the people when I want to minister to them? But then let's look at the heart arts, because often people are expressing themselves in even deeper ways through their artistic forms. And so ethnodoxology really is all about this field of study of the heart arts and helping people express their worship to God.
Really nice. Yeah, it makes me think about excuse me, the cultures, the churches today, and the amount of cultures you have in a church. But then you also have the culture of the church itself, which they're used to, worshipping and doing the service their own way.
Yeah.
And then you have all of these cultures coming in which are not used to that culture. How do you break that? Do you continue? How do you navigate all of that? And I think that's the challenge that the churches have been facing as well.
It is a real challenge, and I think one of the things that really struck me when I was doing some of my own research was a lady who's written a book by a lady called Sandra Van Opstal called The Next Worship, and it was a really helpful model because it talks about 3 areas: hospitality, we welcome you; solidarity, we stand with you; mutuality, we need you. And as you say, it's complex with this makeup of people, but actually the church has to open itself up. It has to have an invitational stance anyway. And so those 3 areas, I think, are really helpful for us to be thinking, how do we have a hospitable spirit to people who are unlike us and different from us and perhaps from another culture? How do we show hospitality to them? How do we stand with them in their pain or what their journey is? And then how do we express that we need them to be part of the body of Christ as well? Because we're all one, we're one in Christ. So it's a great model, and it's one that we talk about a lot on the Masters, and I know it's helped some of our students as well as they've been thinking through how do we help our church move from A to B to C to D in embracing cultural diversity. For anyone who's interested in more, that's a really good. But
you really got me thinking here about Acts chapter 2, where the church is born there basically, and it was people from all over the world basically coming together, So it's not something new. It's something from the beginning that they were coming together. They didn't know how all the different cultures pulling together, living together, and building that community, building the church together. So it's not something actually new. It's been going on since the beginning, really.
I know. I think we've just got a little bit siloed at times, haven't we? And in not only sort of physically, but also in our thinking as well. And I think that's one of the amazing things about All Nations, really, is that it helps you to become more culturally conscious.
Yeah, it's true.
Because you're mixing constantly with people of other cultures. And I think that's what's probably really helped me in my journey as well, just because I've been part of this international environment every day. And you see less of your own culture and it kind of becomes a new culture, doesn't it? Because we are in this whole new space together, and we're sort of working it out together. And actually, that's really exciting. I think sometimes we talk about all the problems and the wrestlings, but it is actually really exciting what God can do when we become a new culture in his eyes. So
it's really about him, isn't it? It's about God himself. It's not about us wanting to please ourselves and wanting to, the church is not there for us. We're there to worship God together.
Yeah, definitely.
And I remember my time here at All Nations as well. One of the things, one thing that I loved about here, I always say this, is that I learned more out of class with people. People with different cultures than actually in class. Because you learn so much. From each other,
Exactly.
and even the worldviews, the point of views that people have. When you come out of a class, this person has this view because that's their worldview, that's their background, and you think,
that's right.
where did they get that from? But then wait a minute, that's actually quite interesting when you start. So it is the way that it shapes you and it transforms you.
It does, totally.
And that's one of the things that I also really enjoyed my time here, was seeing that transformation, not just in the knowledge of learning, theology and also arts and also mission, but it's really that that shaping me, transforming me within learning from different cultures, from different people, and how they view it as well. So that is very, very interesting.
Yeah.
So Jill, how do you see yourself then moving forward? You're going to stay for another 30 years?
It's a $1 million question, isn't it? I'm not sure actually. There's a lot going on in mission at the moment, isn't there? But no, I think, one of the things that it gives me joy really is kind of the networking side of things as well, and helping to resource others really in moving forward in their journey. So I spend a bit of time with an arts network called Arts Plus, and that's kind of vehicle as well for me to engage with a lot of other creatives, primarily across Europe, but beyond there now. It's a relational network. And it's one that I'm connecting All Nations students into regularly, and then connecting former students into. It's really good. So the networking side is quite key at the moment, and just making sure we know each other and that we can collaborate together. I think there's nothing more beautiful than actually being able to collaborate with others.
That is true.
And so that collaboration, that connection is kind of happening quite a lot through the network. So I kind of see a continued role in that. I've always been interested in that. And also just gathering creatives who have heart for mission into a space where, they don't feel alone, that they feel like, what can we do together as a concerted effort to make a difference? So we just recently had a very exciting conference here called Eurocam, which is the European Consultation of Arts, Music and Mission. And that attracted, we only had a limit on numbers, but it attracted 70 people to come and just engage and talk together about what are the needs across Europe, what are the missional needs. And then how, as artists and creatives, how can we speak into that? How can we make a difference? What could we do together? And so it was a weekend spent just really understanding a little bit more about what's going on in Europe, but then meeting each other, recognising one another's giftings, how we could begin to connect together, to collaborate, to get involved in some exciting creative projects. So that's an ongoing discussion. But
that's amazing. That sounds really, really nice.
Yeah, so that's where some of my work is going, as well as my teaching. It's the networking, resourcing, and then the collaborating and helping people to connect and be together.
That's awesome, Jill. Now, Jill, just to land the plane.
Let's land the plane.
What is the, let's say, what would be something that you can inspire our listeners today? For them to get engaged with. That you think that would be very important for them, and that they would enjoy doing that as well. For global mission.
For global mission. Oh gosh, that's a big question. I think everyone goes on a journey, don't they? So things don't just happen like that. I think we have to open ourselves up to possibilities, whether that be a creative possibility, whether that be a missional opportunity, whether that be in our everyday, perhaps getting to know somebody outside our own culture. And so I think being open to new things is actually really, really key.
Yeah.
And sometimes we can't do that until we take a step into something new. And so I think, I mean, I'm biased. If anyone came here, I would see that as part of their journey of opening up. Because until you get exposed to things, you can't see out of your little space, can you? So it wasn't till I came here that I saw that God is the God of the world. It's not just the God of the little church that I've been attending and doing my evangelism and worship and things there. It's like, no, so I think it's that kind of, we all have to be encouraged to sort of keep moving on our journey, but also step out of our comfort zone, step into some new spaces, to some spaces and places that we haven't been in before, to connect with others and find out what they're doing. So I think one of the things that inspired me when I was here was meeting people, a bit like you said, you know, you're learning outside of the curriculum. But actually, to be honest, it was the learning plus the relationships and the stories and the experience of others inspired me. And I only got that because I came here. If I'd stayed in my church, I just wouldn't have got the global perspective. And I certainly wouldn't have got an understanding that, you know, there are all these people out there who have got a heart for God and they've got amazing creative gifts that are there for the kingdom. So, yeah. So
but they need to take that step.
They need to take that step. We all need to keep taking steps, don't we? But yeah, I think if anyone's in a rut and they're wanting to kind of get out of their rut, I think it's like, get yourself into a new space. And if that new space is with kingdom-minded people as well.
That's key.
That is
key.
That is key. Yeah.
There's a quote from Martin Luther King that I really like. He says, "You don't need to see the whole staircase to take the next step.
Yeah.
Just take it, and gradually God will start putting the next step and the next step for you to move."
Yeah.
So I think that's what I get. What you want to, you want to inspire our listeners today.
Yeah.
And that's amazing, Jill.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure. It's been a joy.
Thank you for joining us at the Donation Podcast.
Yeah.
And guys, I hope you have enjoyed this episode with Dr. Jill Ford. And we look forward to seeing you guys again. Tap in, comment, like. All right, we really love spending this time with you guys as well, inspiring, equipping you, and mobilizing for global mission. So God bless you all, and take care, everyone.